Rend, slaughter, devour your enemies. There is no other way to survive. You cannot escape your hunger. Warriors of Purgatory.
Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Demon Games Without Demons. Digital Devil Saga is a game about 6 gangs who want to reenact West Side Story in order to ascend to Nirvana. But everything changes when every single person is suddenly given the power to transform into demons. This is the dominant source of the game's combat. Every single person transforms into demons in order to fight each other, and while you do have the capacity to revert to human form, turning off demonic cannibalism is almost never worth it. However, beating the game once unlocks the human form skill for a New Game Plus run, a passive which allows you to start in human form for every combat. And after I did Nocturne, everybody told me this was going to be impossible, so can you beat Digital Devil Saga without any demons? Heavy semantics warning ahead, this one has to go through a lot of hoops to even be possible. The idea is to play the entire game in human form, with none of the characters' demon forms having a quantifiable effect on anything. In order to do this, we have to have the human form passive equipped to every character at all times, which changes the unit's combat capabilities. While in a human form, the attack command changes from a basic physical hit to a special gun element attack that works differently for every character. In addition, human form also disables the unit's elemental affinities, instead making you take neutral damage from everything that isn't expel, which you are immune to. The big downside though comes with your skills. Most skills are active skills, attacking moves like Agi or Stun Needle that cost HP or MP to use. These abilities are tied to demon form, so even though Seraph starts with Bufu, for example, he can only use it while he is transformed into Varna. Other skills are passive skills, which alter both the human and demon form. Just like with Nocturne, I'm not allowing any leeway here. Any and all active skills are considered demonic in nature and are thus banned. This removes all attacks, buffs, debuffs, healing, and all out-of-battle abilities. I know I ran a poll forever ago asking if out-of-battle healing would be okay, but this one singular guide made me realize it'd be a lot funnier if I overcommitted to the bit as hard as I did for Nocturne. But as I said, the ability to lock myself into human form in the first place is exclusive to New Game Plus. Don't worry, I actually did beat the game beforehand this time, but the issue here is that New Game Plus remembers all mantra you had previously unlocked and makes them available to you. This would, in theory, allow me to grind out every passive I could ever want in an environment outside the challenge, which invalidates the whole thing. As such, I use the Gameshark Code to trick the game into booting into a state where it thinks I just beat the game, which allows me to save a New Game Plus save file maintaining all of my non-existent accomplishments. This creates a New Game Plus file with only each character's default starting mantras unlocked, along with the human form passive. If you want to try this, I've posted the code in the description. You can use it with any Gameshark device or any emulator capable of using Gameshark codes. With all the semantics out of the way, we finally boot into the latest Kingdom Hearts game, where a bunch of Technicolor hair don'ts are in the middle of their turf war. After a bit of hustle and bustle, Green Hair gets on the CB and goes,
Breaker, this is Twister. We're gonna need you to remove that giant butt plug you brought before we send you all to the big record scratch in the sky. Over. Hey, this is Burning Steak. That's gonna be a negative. We did not bring the butt plug. Please remove your own damn selves. Over.
When all of a sudden, the butt plug goes, and lasers go everywhere, blam, blam, hit everyone, and all of a sudden, the Embryons introduce the Vanguards to the concept of Vor. After everybody wakes up from their food coma, they take a look at the butt plug crater and find the first naked chick any of them have ever seen, and... Wait, what do you mean she's 7? Confused as to why they suddenly have this naked chick to deal with, they go ask Harley, the leader of the gang they were just fighting, what's up, and he's still notably upset about the prior cannibalism, which makes Argella so upset that she activates her pink contact lenses. This leads to the only fight in the game that we cannot start in human form, but it's thankfully a tutorial that gives us the first turn in initiative, allowing us to transform out of demon form before the challenge can be invalidated. After this fight, Surf will immediately level up, and I recommend building him for strength to maximize his gun damage. Going through Svadhisthana, note your character's strengths. As we're building Surf for strength, he'll be hitting the hardest by far, but he hits single target. Heat also prioritizes strength, but he uses a grenade launcher to hit all targets at once. As such, his attacks hit for barely under half of what Surf is doing. Meanwhile, Argilla hits slightly harder than Heat, but not as hard as Surf. But she is also single target. If you have 3 or more enemies alive, have Argilla pass her turns to Surf or Heat so they can get extra shots in. If you have 2 or less, have Heat pass to Surf or Argilla. Beyond that, nothing in this dungeon is too difficult as it's basically just a tutorial level. At the end of the dungeon, Heat awakens his Sharingan, and Harley, frankly fed up with being beaten up, chased, and having people try to eat him today, gets so angry he turns into a zebra. Thankfully, he's pretty easy to deal with. Right outside the room where you find him, you'll find some shock ammo, which I recommend giving to Surf. If the shock ammo paralyzes him, all physical attacks will crit for the rest of the turn, which is all of your attacks. If that happens, turn on auto battle and coast. Otherwise, have Heat pass to Argilla and keep taking single target shots. The nice part about this fight is Hayagriva is programmed to be fighting your demon team, so he'll often attack Surf with the fire type Skewer or use Void Ice, trying to block Surf's ice attacks. As none of this applies to us, this fight goes by uneventfully. Argilla's not eating anybody right now, and the plot isn't too happy about that, so by the time we arrive back at the root chakra of Muladhara, she's all pink and demony, and we find Gale, who's just full-on demony, trying to eat Cielo. Thankfully, before Heat can trash-talk himself into a fight, the girl formerly known as Naked Chick comes out singing religious hymns, which causes Gale to calm down and Argilla to stop glowing. Her name is Sarah. Gale can't comprehend why she'd want to help us, but before we have to try and figure anything out for ourselves, the Karma Temple, who oversees the gang war, calls everybody up and tells the leaders of all the gangs to meet them at the Tower of Babylon. Once the voice of God shows up to tell us that West Side Story is going DeviantArt, we unlock the ability to assign each of our party members a specific mantra, which levels up off of its own experience meter. Once that mantra is mastered, you unlock the skills it provides, and can purchase another to start the process anew. For most of the time, we're going to be leveling the Shura tree. In this tree lies HP boosting passives, counterattack passives, and even innate physical resistance. The elemental trees do provide innate resistances to each element, but right now we will largely be prioritizing the physical trees. The gang goes home to discuss their plan of attack, and eventually settle on attempting to form an alliance with the Maribel tribe to take out the more powerful solids. And despite the fact that all the other teams have to die in order for them to ascend to Nirvana, Surf and Argilla seem to want to do this without betraying them. On the way out, we buy shock shell bullets for the whole crew, and head to Manipura to meet up with Janana, and have the most stilted conversation in the entire game.
Are you sad?
What is sad?
I'm not sure. You just seem that way.
If my reaction is sad, then yes, I am sad.
Nailed it.
Janana tells us that she'll work with us if we can prove who is strong enough to tango with her tribe, which feels like a situation that exclusively benefits her, but sure, that works. The first visit to Manipura is largely an extended tutorial. If you ever shock an enemy, go in for crits, but otherwise, most of this is just going to be Svadhisthana Redux, just with harder hitting enemies. You'll probably be doing a lot of out-of-battle healing with items, so don't be afraid to spend some time grinding for healing items outside the shop. But beyond that, everyone here can basically be taken down with the strategy of shoot it with your gun. Along the way, however, we find an Omorkane, a creature immune to everything but gun damage. He'll usually spam Debilitate on you and flee once you start damaging him with guns, so you'll have to kill him quickly. This is actually one of the best parts of the run, as killing Omorkane provides a lot of experience, and this run is uniquely suited to... never mind, he runs away immediately if you have a full party of all guns. The only fight here that's remotely worrying, aside from the final boss, is a group of 3 Yaka who ambush us. They're reinforced by a group of 5, who are then reinforced by a Gyuki. Gyuki likes to combo Power Charge with Body Rush, a combo which can very easily drop anyone not at full HP. In addition, he also has Counter, which can benefit from Power Charge if he has it up, which gives him a 40% chance to retaliate against any gun attacks. Take this fight slow, and don't be afraid to heal if you get low. If you have the funds, he's weak to Earth, which can be an option if you want to buy Earth Element consumables, but they are by no means necessary. After Gyuki runs away screaming, you can open a gate that lets you walk back to the save point, which is useful if you want to stock up on rations or landmines, both of which I recommend. Walking into the final room, Janana refuses to fight us, instead delegating us to her glam rock reject named Bat.
My name is Bat. Remember it. It will be carved into your corpse.
Really gotta think, his parents chose to name him Bat. Terrible names aside, Kamazatsu is honestly not that difficult. The hardest part about fighting him is his AoE physical attack, and the fact that he'll occasionally heal himself with HP Thief, which heals roughly the damage of 1 gunshot. He'll occasionally go into a guard stance, which he'll stay in until he's knocked out of it via earth damage. Somewhat notable is his capacity to inflict panic via Raving Slash. If he does, there is a chance the unit will decide to revert to demon form of their own volition, but there should never be an instance in which you aren't able to pass your turns to change them back before he has a chance to do something about it. Just stay topped up on healing and execute him with a crossfire for style points.
Dude, challenge run, no demons.
It's a cutscene. It doesn't count.
He's right, cutscenes don't count.
Why not? Who decided that?
Who decided you three aren't allowed to use your demon forms?
Alright, fair enough.
So we roll up on the Solid's castle, with Janana leading the Maribel to make a diversion for Soph to sneak some Embryon in. Before you do that though, turn around and head back to Svadhisthana. Svadhisthana is the best option we have for a de facto home base, as it has a shop right outside the load zone, and while its large karma terminal is in an area with enemies, they are extremely weak. While Muladhara is safer, it requires a fair bit of legwork to get anywhere, and Manipura's enemies are a bit rougher in terms of level. If you need to shop, heal, or rotate modules between missions, go to Svadhisthana. Whichever shop you choose to use, new bullets should be in stock. I recommend metal jackets for sake of power, though if you feel like sacrificing some power for a chance to freeze, you could also go with frigid shots. And since we're in Svadhisthana already, I recommend going back to the room where you fought Harley to get the blue key, allowing us to dispel any blue-colored barriers. You could have done this before the Maribel hideout, but with more levels and better bullets, you'll probably find it easier now. Make sure you're prepared before starting the Anahata mission. The Solid's base is fairly large, so it won't be easy to make your way out. The Maribel's distraction seems to work, as Soph is able to sneak his team of 3 in the back door. Take your time exploring these opening areas. Encounters are disabled until the first scripted fight, so loot what you can. After a few rooms, you'll get busted and have to deal with a couple of Archangels who have the special ability of being completely pathetic. Random encounters are turned on after that though, and the enemies in this area have noticeably more health than the ones in Manipura. Some enemies are weak to gun, but you'll probably be feeling the heat more than before. Be prepared to heal a lot more than normal and keep a mental note of any healing stations or large karma terminals. It was at this point I was starting to feel the effects of Soph's lower magic stat. The magic stat determines both the damage you deal and the damage you take from magic attacks. So Soph's magic being lower than Heat's means he's taking almost twice as much damage as Argilla from any magic attack. Notable though, be careful if you fall into any pits while solving these Moai puzzles. The encounters down below are slightly more challenging than those upstairs, but they shouldn't be too difficult for you to deal with at this point. Do note though, since we are on New Game Plus, if you see a room with ominous dialogue, run. Once we arrive in Mick's throne room, we find ourselves surrounded. The leader of the ambush tells us that Bat came squealing before turning into a turdak and shouting,
Feeding time!
This is the only really difficult fight in the entire area, so I recommend bringing a lot of resources. First phase is against 4 Ikusa, and you'll want to put them down as fast as possible. Spamming force items at them isn't a bad idea, as you'll want to down them all at once so that they don't use reinforcements to summon more of themselves. After they all go down, another wave of 4 will show up, followed by 2 more Ikusa along with their Turdak commander. The Turdak complicates things a lot. He loves casting Venom Wave, an all-target physical move with a poison chance, alongside Death Spray, a single target move with a high crit chance. Be prepared to spend a long time either reviving or cleansing poison, and make sure you brought plenty of items to do so with. This can become even worse if he casts Power Charge, which will allow Death Spray to drop a target from full. Take the Ikusa out first to prevent reinforcements, then slowly chip away at the Turdak while using potions. If you have the money for it, Turdak is weak to Expel, but this will very likely end in a shootout.
The only way.
Moving on down, we find the only shop in the entire castle alongside a large terminal. Use both to restock and heal, then walk out the doors to see Mick just ragdolling Janana. Oh my god. After Mick's impressive track and field display, it's revealed that Janana has also not been eating anyone, but unlike us, she didn't have a magical girl to contain her hunger, and we forgot to offer her ours. Sarah realizes this from across the map as Janana goes berserk, which Mick decides is a good time for him to skedaddle. Unfortunately for the Embryon, that leaves us to deal with Janana's demon form, Usas. Unfortunately for Usas, she's extremely easy. Her whirlwind move has the possibility to be a bit bothersome, and Merin can cause us to lose turns if it charms, but neither sway the fight too much in her favor. The main thing of concern is typically that Usas has a lot of expel skills. Hama in this game cuts the target's HP in half, and Hamon reduces it by 2/3. In addition, she'll summon Unicorn after a while, which should cast Hama themselves or attack with Body Rush. And if either of the unicorns are alive, she can combo with it to cast Seraph Lore to reduce the HP of all foes to 20% of their current total. Needless to say, this is a very Expel-based fight, which would be very scary if all humans weren't innately immune to Expel.
Rattle 'em, boy!
Following this, the gang goes back to Maribel HQ, and Gale shows up like, "Yo, Sarah said you're in danger, what happened?" and joins the party. The bad news is Gale's kit is not remotely useful for this run. The good news is he's still worth using over Heat. His assault rifle does about the same damage as Heat's grenade launcher, but hits 2 to 5 times on random targets, rather than hitting all targets one time. Even against a single target, Gale still has a 50-50 chance to do twice as much damage as Heat. So we promptly throw Heat in the garbage and proceed to our second visit to Manipura. Manipura has gone through a bit of an upgrade for this visit. The encounters are now upgraded to match those we found in the Solid Space, likely due to the fact that they now seem to be occupying the area. Although most random encounters will run away from you at the first opportunity. After a bit of walking and useless random encounters, we make our way back to where we last fought Bat and find an assortment of solids who don't attack us, despite having us out in a— oh, this is a trap. Bat's actually trying a little harder this time, as he opens up by guarding immediately and summoning 2 Baphomets as backup. Furthermore, his guard now works differently, as it no longer drops after being hit by an earth attack. Unfortunately, this is actually good for us, as it means we can buy enough earth damage items to get a lot of turns in. He actually has the same amount of HP as he did last fight, so just buy as many landmines as you can from the shop at the start of the area and spam them every turn. If he casts Void Earth, have Surf and Argilla gun down the Baphomets on either side until he stops, then return to spam. If you kill one of them, awesome, but it's not necessary. The fight ends when Camazotz goes down. Following this fight, Heat literally makes a break back to base, and Argilla manages to let Bat fly away. The Solids then close all the gates, forcing us to travel through Manipura 1 in reverse in order to escape. The game does provide a free infinite use healing station, so use that to heal up and don't be afraid to retreat to this point in order to use it again. Random encounters will now actually try to fight you, and some can be annoying, like the Kelpie who like to use Comatose to knock you out and Secunda to make sure you can't hit, all while they spam Mazionga for damage. Don't be afraid to grind at the healing spot or spend most of this area running. Much of what is here is not harder or more lucrative than what lies ahead. Given some of what lies ahead are non-optional encounters against hordes of Nue with the capacity to spam Mamudoon as a combo attack, which has a 60% chance to instantly kill every member of your entire party, so I mean, you know, everything is relative. The only other fight to note on the way out is an Atavaka who guards the door. Sadly for him, he's also weak to landmines, and the shop is available right before you fight him. If you run out of landmines, buy more, and spam them at him to get rid of him. Arriving back at Muladhara, we find the base in tatters. Bloodstains cover the wall, and many lie face down in the dirt. The Solids used our time in Manipura to sneak attack the base, kidnap Sarah, and left Cielo alive to tell us they went to coordinate 136, though we leave him behind to guard Muladhara again. Also, Cielo suddenly becomes Jamaican.
The northern ruins at coordinate 136.
I gotta redeem myself for all this!
It's incredible and I love it. Coordinate 136 looks like a giant amusement park castle, making this the second castle we've had to go after Mick in. Everyone gets a sense of deja vu, like they've been in this place before, while Cielo and a cat take out a single guard back home to sneak off and help us. It was at this point my character started unlocking counter skills. Counter provides a 40% chance of counterattacking after receiving any physical hit. Given it will only be the strength of a single gunshot, and multi-target users like Gale and Heat will only attack the target that triggered the counter, but it's still very useful for racking up damage. The castle, through audio recordings, tells us of a princess who protected her people's land through special powers. 2 princes, close friends of the princess, one kind and one violent, fell in love with the princess. The princess loves the good prince, which leads you to the first puzzle in the area. She asks you to tell the good prince her feelings and find paintings of him within a maze. Every painting in the area will appear blue at first, but upon closer inspection, most will turn red. Simply watch for what paintings change and use your camera to inspect them carefully, and you'll be able to successfully play matchmaker. Should you step before a portrait of the evil prince, you'll fall down to the catacombs below, which can actually be an efficient way to backtrack to the start, if you're okay with the higher encounter rate for a while. Most of the encounters here aren't that difficult anyway, your shot should be strong enough to handle the enemies. You'll have a lot of fights with more than 2 units here, so swapping to Heat isn't a terrible idea. Regardless of your team though, I recommend working on mantras that provide shared and mutual karma, to ensure everybody gets experience after battles. After the first few floors, you'll be accosted by the Hip Hop Brothers, who will spit bars in your face to inform you that Mick and Bat are at the top of the castle with Sarah. The game then allows you to continue listening to them he and ho for as long as you like until they literally ask you to get on with it. Doing so is very important because Jack Frost is legally a fiend in this game for some reason, which is frankly terrifying, and he owns the title. After Jack Frost has taken a fair knock of damage, he'll start spamming Mediarama. And while you can theoretically outdamage the healing, you can't do that and also deal with the Pyrojack slamming Mind Charge Miragions in your face. Once Jack Frost starts spamming, you will lose as it's impossible to keep damage on the board. Thankfully, he only starts spamming heals if he drops the low health. His AI takes no account for Pyrojack. Gun Pyrojack down, and Jack Frost will soon follow. He might be able to out-heal damage on some turns, but eventually Jack Frost will just decide not to heal himself and let you win. Ascending further, the recording continues, telling us how the evil prince craved the affections of the princess for himself, though his attempts to sway her love were to no avail. This results in a puzzle which is surprisingly easy and low risk. While in these puzzle rooms, there are no random encounters, so you just need to figure out how to rotate light to hit the mirrors in order to reach statues of the good prince. Take your time, map out how the light is going to bounce, and you'll get this in no time at all. The recording continues how both princes came to rescue the princess when she was captured, only for the evil prince to challenge the good prince to a duel. You have to ride elevators to flip switches in order to move the elevator with the good prince on it to be facing the evil prince. It's more time consuming than difficult. The final recording is corrupted beyond comprehension, but the good prince was revealed to be evil and vice versa. The truly good prince was struck down by the truly evil prince, and the princess collapsed into the body of the prince once seen as evil, sinking into a sadness that called forth calamitous destruction, causing the world to be swallowed by darkness. Heat, frustrated with puzzles and lore, literally just punches the wall and the puzzle starts working.
Wow, that worked?
The rest of this puzzle is basically the switch elevator combined with the light room. Thankfully, again, no encounters, and this one is significantly shorter because you don't need to loop back through the same room over and over. This ends with the gang reaching the highest room of the tallest tower in order to save their princess. Heat walks forward in the anime hands-on-head pose and is like,
"What are you gonna do? Stab me?"
Bat tells Heat to fight Surf, and the two briefly have an encounter that I really don't know how to regulate because Surf doesn't attack, but he's in his demon form, and so is Heat, but he's an enemy right now. But before we get too caught up in semantics, Sarah throws herself from the bed. Oh crap. While we have Cielo rush Sarah to the hospital, Mick tries to flee the scene, only to be stopped by Gale making a citizen's arrest. This causes Mick to digivolve into Rahu, and we finally get to fight him. The Rahu fight is actually kind of a pain. His head and body are two separate entities, with both voiding all elements except for one. The head is weak to force, and the body is weak to fire. For us, this means extra press turns are impossible unless we crit. The head also loves to use Absorb, a move which takes one party member out of the fight while slowly draining their HP. The standard way to end this is to do enough damage to the head that he drops the party member, but at our level, that takes so long it's basically impossible. To make matters worse, the head can cast Diorama, and it loves to do so on itself. Meanwhile, the body has Rakukaja, Rakunda, and Tarukaja, meaning it'll be buffing them both while shredding your team. I tried this fight over and over, and it was just not happening. Having hit a hard wall and unable to progress, I decided to take a break from the challenge run. For over a year. Oops. When I came back, I had a fresh new perspective and a new plan. Out of everyone, Gale was exactly who needed to get absorbed. His magic is comparable enough to Argilla's that he doesn't take too much damage, and besides that, he's the least important member in the fight. Surf leads DPS with his gun, and Argilla's rifle isn't too far behind. Plus, if she gets the last turn, she can use a Molotov to damage only the body for massive damage without losing turn economy. Also, Gale not taking too much damage from the Absorb means we're able to get a lot of damage on the body before the head comes back to actually take turns. And we do want to target the body first. The head is less inclined to heal the body, and getting rid of the debuffs is important. Furthermore, most of the damage comes from the body. If Gale dies, revive him immediately, and pray he gets absorbed again. Once the body goes down, the head doesn't have much left it can do. A few more shots of gunplay, and it's long live the king. Sarah's in a coma after falling off of a building, but Cielo says that she'll get over it in a few days. He also joins our party, but right now he's entirely useless. That said, once he's up to speed, he's one of our best units. His gun can still only hit 1 to 2 times for counters, but he fires 3 to 7 bullets compared to Gale's 2 to 5. Even doing slightly less damage than Gale, this causes him to out-damage Gale in non-boss encounters consistently, almost doing as much damage as Surf overall. Needless to say, we will absolutely be power leveling him in all relevant mantras as quickly as possible, since the next dungeon will see us setting up a trap for the brutes in an abandoned ship that we cannot leave until we finish the dungeon. Since Sarah is in a coma, Argilla agrees to be our new Sarah, using herself as bait in order to draw out Bat and the brutes, thus beginning the abandoned ship dungeon. Heat is protecting old Sarah at an undisclosed location, while new Sarah leaves the party for the dungeon, leaving us with Surf, Gale, and Cielo. Our objective is to place 8 bombs throughout the ship, 1 on each floor. Thankfully, there are no encounters until we place the first bomb on the bottom floor, at which point we are forced into a fight with 3 Naga. They don't put up much of a fight, but the second the music kicks in, the game is on. Out of all the random encounters in the ship, there are only 3 major threats. Isora can summon more of themselves, and the longer the fight drags on, the harder it can make things as they hit you with powerful ice spells. Though one isn't too hard, multiple Isora summoning multiple more Isora can be a threat by attrition. You'll want to kill them quickly. The town have access to high counter, which gives them a 60% chance to counterattack any gunshot. If you have earth element items, use them, but you'll mostly be watching for when you can take one down with a shot from Surf's handgun. Lastly, phantoms are immune to both physical and gun attacks, and these are particularly rough because they make up one scripted encounter. I recommend buying force items to blast them down, but if you don't have them, whatever you have in your inventory will do. If you find them in a random encounter, just run, they aren't worth it. As you traverse the boat, the game shows cutscenes of Bat flying in, only to get attacked by new Sarah in her demon form. Thankfully, this fight is entirely legal by the rules of the run, as new Sarah manages to miss every single attack. Once we arrive on the 5th floor, the encounters get a little tougher. Chai-Z and Town become significantly more common, but more enemies up here start dropping Magni bombs, the upgrade to landmines. Much of what is here is weak to Earth, so feel free to drop an item or two if you gotta get out of a bad spot. Don't go too hard though, we do want to save some of them for later, along with any wind walls you find. There's little else to say here, run from the phantoms where you can, spam force items where you can't, plant bombs throughout the ship, and Surf drops in with a superhero landing to fight Camazotz. Who is Argilla? Camazotz 3 is actually somewhat difficult, but not for the reason you might think. Most of his moveset is the same as last time, though some of his moves do more damage, and his HP has also doubled. His guard mechanic works the same as it did last fight, so all the Magni bombs we've been grabbing will come in plenty handy. No, the big problem here is one of his few new skills, Zotzalaha Bane, a move with 100% accuracy that inflicts the unique Bat status. When inflicted with Bat, all of your attacks do garbage damage, and you'll also take more damage and gain a weakness to force. This might sound bad, but it's all negligible. We're more than geared to handle one or even all of our party members being garbage for a few turns. The issue comes when the status wears off, because the game, unable to comprehend why on earth we would not want to be in our demon form, makes it so that once we cleanse Bat status, we are put into demon form. The very act of cleansing Bat puts you in demon form, and we have nothing to cleanse Bat with but time. This means that once a unit comes out of demon form, we have to make sure we get them out of demon form before they are struck by any attack. Otherwise, the higher stat values of demons will provide a defensive boost and invalidate the run. Thankfully, there's a solution to every problem. After he uses Zotzalaha Bane, he usually likes to follow it up with Zanma or Winds of Hell to capitalize on the new force weakness. However, the enemies outside this fight drop not only Magni bombs, but also wind walls. This puts the fight entirely in your control, as you're able to grind the materials to beat Camazotz right outside his fight. So I went and grinded out a good amount of items, and then got on a decent run where he hit Cielo with Bat before guarding. I used Cielo's turn to throw up a wind wall before tossing Magni bombs with Gale and Surf, and since Cielo now had a turn he couldn't pass, I decided to also use an attack mirror to completely invalidate Camazotz's entire moveset. And following this, old Sarah has recovered, so now she's Sarah again, and new Sarah's back to being Argilla. She and Heat celebrate this by not having any interaction whatsoever. Heat and Argilla both instantly master whatever mantra you had them on before they left the party, so put them on something good before the ship dungeon. Sadly, blowing up a boat didn't kill as many brutes as we hoped, and many of the solids joined the brutes instead of us. These added numbers made them able to overrun the only tribe whose base we don't visit, the wolves. Eager for revenge, the leader of the Wolves tribe, Lupa, brokers an alliance with Surf and the gang in exchange for letting Surf kill him later. Lupa thankfully doesn't join our party, which is good, because that means he's free to go forth in his demon form and fight what I assume would be actual encounters if he wasn't a walking boss fight. There's very little to talk about in the Samsara Tunnels as a result. It's pretty much a straight shot of random encounters and enemies, along with some annoying water puzzles that I honestly recommend just looking up. There's nothing here that can do much to slow you down, so take your time and comb the place from top to bottom. Notably, Lupa seems to be sparing members of his tribe that joined the brutes, though any actual brutes he finds aren't so lucky. Yet none are devoured, as just like Janana, he's not eating. As such, we're forced to fight yet another berserk comrade. Cerberus is a tough fight, as he has a lot of health on each head, and each head gets its own action. Each head has its own different skill set, and you'll need to know which is which when designing an order to take them down. The center head is the main head, and is easily the most dangerous, packing multiple different fire skills for single and group target fire damage. On top of this, he also has Rend, which is capable of doing some serious single target physical damage. This is made worse by him packing power and mind charge to turn up the power on these strikes to obscene levels. The right head has nearly every buff and debuff skill, meaning the longer it's alive, the more damage the center head will be doing, and the left head packs Diorama, which will use at nearly every opportunity to heal up the other two heads. This is all compounded by the fact that every head, and I do mean every head, is packing both Counter Strike and High Counter, upgrades upon the counter skill which provide 50 and 60% odds respectively. When together, it has an effective 80% chance to counter all physical and gun attacks. We don't have any effective way to spam items yet either, and the only ones that would do decent damage are Ice and Almighty besides. Suffice to say, obviously the left head needs to die first. It'll consistently heal its allies, but will never heal itself. The other head is going to spend all day debuffing your defense and buffing the center's magic, but there's not a whole lot you can do about that, so focus on knocking down the left head ASAP. Once the left head is down, you might be inclined to take out the right head, as it takes increased damage from bullets, and thus you'll be dealing with a less buffed up center head. However, this is actually a terrible idea. If you down both the left and right heads, the center head will have a very high chance of starting all of its turns by casting Psycho Rage, which gives it 4 additional actions. When it does this, it usually follows up by using Power Charge, Mind Charge, or both, and then blowing up somebody. By this point in the fight, you're probably going to be pretty well debuffed, so those attacks are going to be doing damage well in the 200s at least. A Power Charge Rend is able to drop anyone in your group who doesn't have physical resistance, and a Mind Charge Agudine doesn't sit much better. Realizing this, I knew I would have to come up with a different plan. I went and grinded up physical resistance on all of my units so I could deal with Power Charge Rend more easily, which also meant I had enough money and had completed enough mantras to unlock wildcards, items that act as a single cast Megiddo. Argilla is the best unit to use them as she has the highest magic stat among the group, though Gale and Cielo also work. It should also be stated that Frost Bombs do more damage to specifically the left side healer head, whereas wildcards do more overall damage. Thus I recommend using Frost Bombs first to ensure the left head dies first. Both the left and right heads have 1700 HP, and while the left head's healing will do a good job at ensuring it's the first to go, it's always best to be careful. If you need to heal anybody, do so with Surf. His turn is the least important at this stage in the fight. If you need to heal with 2 units, have whoever isn't Argilla help out, as Argilla's magic stat should be put towards attacks. Once the left head dies, start having Surf and Argilla unload on the center head with their single shot guns, while having Cielo heal up and throw firewalls whenever the center head goes for Mind Charge. Surf's turn goes from the least valuable to the most valuable, as his high strength means his shots do the most. He'll be doing almost twice as much damage as Argilla, so if anyone needs to heal, make sure it's not Surf. Note, you can still use items, but if the right head dies, the center head will go into Psycho Rage. So if you do use items, stop once the right head hits low health. Once the center head dies, the right head has little it can do. A few more shots is all you need to put this puppy down. Gale Mercy kills his new friend and swears vengeance upon the world before we finally unlock Ajna. Ajna usurps Svadhisthana as the best area for regrouping and preparing, as the shop and large terminal are right beside each other and not within any encounter zones. We can't leave Ajna yet, but we'll be coming back here to heal and shop most often. Entering the base, we hear a strange audio recording and Sarah and the gang hanging out on the beach, which is super weird considering this game takes place in a blown out junkyard. Maybe that's plot related. Regardless, the brutes make their base out of a dilapidated mansion. A lot of the enemies here deal with gun spam fairly well, either due to how much HP they have, or how much damage they can put out. That said, the dungeon itself isn't that difficult. The main foyer has 3 crystals, all of which can change the layout of the mansion. Each one tells you from which direction you feel enmity, and that's the way you need to go under that configuration. At the rear end of each of these locations lies a boss you need to take down before you're allowed to progress to the end. For standard dungeon crawling, I recommend sticking to Cielo, Surf, and Argilla. Cielo for multi-target gun attacks, Surf for single-target assassinations, and Argilla for a bit of both. At this point, if you haven't unlocked physical resistance on all your units, get working on that immediately. It's the most useful trait to have. The first boss fight on the left side is a Kotobopas. The least scary part of what he's packing is his elemental skills. The scary part is when he casts Psycho Rage, as he usually follows it up with either Stone Gaze or Gate of Hell. Stone Gaze is a guaranteed stone if it hits, and Gate of Hell is a weak physical with a 35% chance to also inflict stone. And whenever he applies stone, he always follows it up with basic attacks to try and instant kill them, as a stoned target has a chance to instantly shatter on a physical hit. If he's lucky, it's not uncommon for him to drop 2 units in a single turn. Not to mention, it's a game over if all of your units are stoned or dead. If you have any fire-based items on hand still, now is a good time to use them, and Death Resist, or Null Death if you have it, will help out a lot, as Stone Gaze is Death type. Ultimately, this fight will come down to luck of not getting stoned. The second fight on the right path we'll call Ishizu because I'm never sure how antsy YouTube's monetization bots are about that word. Ishizu has a fairly simple gimmick. She repels physical and gun attacks and will call in multiple copies of herself as reinforcements at the start of the fight. What attacks she uses are up to you, as whatever elements you use on them, they will respond in kind. This means if you have the walls and resources, you can swing with only one element and then use the wall item to block it afterwards. I was unaware of this and proceeded to spam Megiddo via wildcards at them, which resulted in them returning the favor. Whether you do this fight the right way or the stupid way, since they only use reinforcements at the start, once one of them goes down, the rest will quickly follow. The final fight along the northwest path is against Nidhogg, or rather, several Nidhogg. The Nidhogg will all start with around 400 HP, and can heal each other for around 250 with Diorama. They can cast Bufudine for shockingly decent damage despite their middling stats, and can summon reinforcements of each other. Don't screw around here, just burst them down with wildcards and move on to phase 2. Eventually, one of the Nidhogg will play their hand, cannibalizing one of their own to grow larger. This Nidhogg has 4500 HP, and is still capable of spawning smaller Nidhogg. I recommend spamming wildcards to keep the small fries down while doing the best you can to put bullets into the big one using Surf, as he is mercifully susceptible to gun damage. Of all the fights in this dungeon, this one is the simplest, but it's important to remember the main Nidhogg is capable of casting Mahakasha, which makes the smaller ones hit harder with Bufudine. If a small one gets too many buffs, knock them down to force the big one to spawn another. It won't be too long before this dragon is slain, and we can clean up the little guys to end the fight. Once all 3 bosses are down, you unlock a final white object in the foyer, allowing you to finally tackle the main boss of this dungeon along the northeastern path. We finally take Heat out of the garbage, as he'll be useful in this fight, and we move on to the final boss of the area.
Well, nothing upstairs.
Don't move, moron, or I'll crush your skull!
Colonel Beck shows up and gets mad at us for not knowing spoilers because he read the manga first. He punches Heat in the gut, which briefly makes him turn into a demon to try to eat everybody, but Sarah gets him to calm down as Beck gives his Akechi speech.
Teammates! Friends! To hell with that!
Tribes. Comrades. I'm sick of all that bullshit. I'll make you recall the sins you have forgotten.
Ravana starts the fight invisible and can be in one of 6 locations. This is why we took Heat, as his grenade launcher was able to hit all 6 positions at once. Ravana's first phase has a 100% dodge chance against attacks that target more than one person. After the first turn, Sarah will give you approximate knowledge of Ravana's position. Think of Ravana's position on his side as being numbered from 1 to 6. If she says straight ahead or to the left, that rules out 5 and 6. If she says straight or right, that rules out 1 and 2. If she says not in the center, that rules out 3 and 4. I found he tends to favor positions 2 and 5, but it is totally random. If you don't hit him, he'll usually follow up with a weak attack, and on the following turn, Sarah's callouts will be more precise, eventually telling you his exact position. You likely won't get to that point though, since as long as you're having Surf and Argilla attack 2 of the 4 available positions each turn, you'll eventually find him. This phase isn't really hard and ends after you do 1000 damage as he shifts into his attack form. And this is where the problem starts. Ravana in his attack form looks a lot like the Starman from Earthbound and is just as annoying. He maintains all of his elemental attacks but gains an annoying gun resistance alongside Ki Blast. The real issue here is his unique move, Hunger Wave. Remember how Bat's unique status forced the units into their demon form once they came out of it? Well, this is even worse, as Hunger forces you into demon form upon infliction. He usually follows this up with Infinite Wind, an extremely high damage all-target force move. This means Ravana will regularly try to force us into our demon form before forcing us to take less damage from an attack due to our increased defenses from demon form, and Hunger Wave has a whopping 65% chance to be applied. But say, somehow, he doesn't use Infinite Wind, or the attack miraculously misses all Hunger targets. We can't cleanse Hunger initially. The only way to cleanse it is through Sarah, who will come in and pray it away from one target at the start of each turn. This allows the unit to waste their action reassuming human form, but a 65% chance to apply is awful big, so the odds are someone, more likely 2 people, will still be in demon form and afflicted with hunger. A target afflicted with hunger has a coin flip's chance to either take a chunk of damage and pass their turn, or attack an ally, which, mind you, if they attack a demon form target, is more damage demon form is mitigating. This boss causes a semantics nightmare like you wouldn't believe. Even if we leave ourselves in demon form, a hungry target can still counter, and the demon forms counter harder than anybody's gun. The odds of a demon affecting this fight in some capacity, thus invalidating the run, are so unbelievably high, it's all but guaranteed. As far as I'm concerned, this fight is downright impossible to get a party of 3 through without demons. And within that sentence lies the answer. The odds 2 or more targets are afflicted with hunger is 71.825%, with a further rough 23.89% of only 1 infliction. That latter number, along with the 4.285% chance of everyone dodging it, is our odds of being able to continue any run following Hunger Wave, and 28.175% is simply too low. But there is one way to guarantee hunger only affects 1 unit. Only use 1 unit. Can you beat Ravana without using any demons and also on solo mode? Now you might think our go-to here would be Surf, but remember, he follows Hunger Wave up with a magic attack, and even though I've been leveling Surf's magic stat lately, his magic stat's still pretty low. Plus that gun resistance isn't doing us any favors. No, this is a fight for our main girl, Argilla. Argilla's higher magic stat means she'll take less magic damage and deal more of it. So the second the fight begins, we have the boys tag out and Argilla begins her long, painful, half-hour-long war of attrition against Ravana. Learn how much damage your wildcards do with Argilla before you actually start an attempt. Then divide that number into Ravana's 3800 health. For me, she was doing around 110 damage, so I brought 50 wildcards just in case the SMT wiki lied to me again. And make sure you have a hefty stock of healing items, you're going to need them. This fight is going to take forever, and you will long for the moments when Argilla somehow jukes a Hunger Wave. I recommend having as many magic mirrors and wind walls as you can carry to dodge infinite wind in those moments. After many hours, Ravana will sprain his knee, which means you're close. Never give up, never give in, keep healing, and keep throwing items at him. Eventually, he might even run out of MP, which I don't think anyone even thought was possible in this game. After what feels like forever, both Sarahs will finally defeat Colonel Beck. The gang tries to interrogate Beck, and he gives precious little information, but does manage to tell us that everybody in the junkyard is somebody who died in Nirvana. The gang realize this actually makes sense, as they remember things, children and cats, which don't exist in the junkyard. They also felt like they remembered locations like Coordinate 136 and the Ajna base, despite that being impossible. All the while, Sarah has abandoned the party to go and try and stop Angel from destroying the world, sparing the Embryon their fate. Arriving at the Karma Temple, despite having killed all the other tribes, the guards refuse us entry. So it's time to fight the government. The temple guards are immune to gun, but take enough damage from our items that it doesn't really matter. Their main notable trait is usually their semi-unique skills Revert and Maravert, which revert a unit to human form. No prizes, I'm guessing why that's not important. Before walking in, make sure you talk to this guy outside the temple. His name is James Mason. It'll be relevant in Digital Devil Saga 2. Most of this dungeon is a puzzle cube similar to the Tower of Kagatsuchi from Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. And with the sheer level of power we're bringing to the table, normal encounters are all but irrelevant at this point. As such, let me just give you the highlights. Before we can even get started, our elevator crashes, forcing us to ride up from the Sea of Milk and confront Vasuki. Packing 5,000 HP, this fight is fairly tough, so I recommend packing as many firebombs as possible. Vasuki's unique skill, Himalaya, has an extremely high chance to freeze, which allows them to swing for crits on frozen foes. If you can be resistant to ice, I highly recommend it, but if you can't, physical resistance will at least make the follow-up attacks hurt less. They resist Fizz, but oddly not Gun, so toss items with Argilla while Surf guns them down. Use Cielo for extra damage and healing where needed, and this fight will go down without too much trouble. As Sarah continues up the temple floors, we have to deal with some teleporting wall puzzles. These aren't too much to work through. Just keep an eye on where you're going to end up, and no one teleporter's activation point can never put you on top of another's. It was at this point I came across what might be the hardest fight in the entire proper tower climb, as on the tower exterior, Jatayu descends the throwdown. Jatayu is, sadly, unlike nearly every other bird, not weak to gun, and Jatayu rolls up with quite the fun little strategy. Jatayu has 3 press turns, and will open by casting Taunt twice, giving you +4 to your physical attack and -4 to your defenses. He'll follow this up by casting Dekaja, peeling the buffs and leaving the debuffs. Jatayu will then begin alternating between debuffing you further or casting buff spells and swinging for magic attacks, which should make it difficult to keep damage on with how much you need to keep healing. Thankfully, he doesn't actually have too much multi-target potential, being restricted to Mamudun and Gate of Hell. That being said, getting unlucky with Stone or Death can be all Jatayu needs to secure a win, and he's no slouch in the HP department with a solid 2400. He'll do a good job softening you up, and there's no way to prevent that from happening. I recommend buying as many wild cards as well as their upgrade wild bombs as you can, because he's not weak to anything. Furthermore, if you've not been leveling Surf into Magic, 2 hours ago would be a good time to start, as Jatayu is going to be debuffing your attacking stats a lot, and items seem to not be affected by attacking stat debuffs. They're affected by the opponent's personal defense and evasion buffs, as well as any nerfs to your own accuracy, but they seem to ignore Makanda placed on you, which I won't complain about, but is strange. Regardless, at this point, you should be packing a solid number of wildcards, if not their upgrade, and coming from Argilla, Gale, or Cielo, they should be packing quite a punch, so eventually you'll knock Jatayu down. But if you thought that was the end of the fight, you ain't seen nothing yet. After Jatayu goes down, Garuda follows up as reinforcements, packing another 3000 HP and significantly more offensive beef to back it up. He has Zandine, Mabufudine, Megidola, Power Wave, and both flavors of charge to back it up. And unlike some multi-phase bosses, Garuda comes in as reinforcements, meaning this is legally the same fight, which means any debuffs Jatayu applied are very much still on here. And Garuda repels gun attacks! If you have the safety to do so, I would recommend doing what I call a party rotation. I learned about this trick later, but in short, you swap Gale or Cielo, whoever's in reserve, for Surf, who is in the middle position. Then swap out Argilla for Seraph, and then Argilla for whoever's in the first position. If you started with Cielo, Surf, and Argilla, you should now have Argilla, Gale, and Surf. If you need to swap back, swap Argilla for Cielo, Surf for Argilla, and Gale for Surf in that order, and you'll be back where you started. This is the only way we have the cleanse debuffs, and while it does take our entire turn, in circumstances where you find yourself debuffed beyond help, it may be the best move. As I had not figured this out yet, I retreated to grind while also buying myself a few more toys to play with. In particular, the Megiddo Fire item, an infinite use version of the wild card. Given this does less damage than wild bombs, but it's better in terms of overall economy. Prioritize using wild bombs with Argilla and leave the lower magic units like Surf to casting the infinite use item. Eventually, along with a bit of luck and a lucky attack mirror, you'll take Garuda down too. Moving forward a little bit more, we are attacked by Anahata, who has a whopping 7 press turns. Thankfully, he doesn't do too much with them. His attacks do pitiful damage, so you're able to work him using Megiddo Fires and Wild Bombs to great effect. He'll spend some time casting status effects like Sleep, Stun, and Panic, but he's fairly inaccurate with them, so odds are you'll be able to dodge him more often than not. At around 5500 HP and taking about 170 damage from Surf's Megiddo Fire and 250 from Argilla's Wild Bombs, this boss is more of a nuisance than a problem. And with that, there stands nothing before us but the final floors. We are officially at the point of no return. There is naught here to do but ascend the final staircase for the endgame. Sarah begs Angel to stop and leave the junkyard alone, and since Sarah is necessary for Angel's plans, she threatens to have a Rakshasa kill her if Angel refuses. Angel responds by deleting the Rakshasa from existence. Once the gang shows up, Sarah forces them to stop, trying to keep them from fighting her leaving, but the power of friendship is stronger, and Seraph is able to charge Angel, though his attack is blocked. Angel is into this, and allows us to charge her to see how strong we've become. Let's make her regret it.
Bring it on!
The first phase against Hari-Hara isn't too much of a concern. She does have Almighty Resist, but Megiddo Fire will still be out-damaging your guns as long as your magic stat is high enough. At this point, I had Seraph with almost as much magic as Argilla, so both of them were more than capable of outpacing their guns with Megiddo Fire, and certainly with Wild Bombs. This phase of the fight sees her swap between two forms based on Vishnu and Shiva. She starts as Vishnu, though this form is more based around buffing herself and debuffing you. She has access to all 4 buff spells along with Debilitate. Beyond that, however, she is packing Vaikuntha, which is a high damage almighty move with a 25% chance to petrify, along with stealing Ravana's Hunger Wave because we didn't struggle with that enough already. Thankfully, we don't need Argilla to solo this fight as well. Hari-Hara's version of Hunger Wave is actually nerfed, with only a 45% chance to inflict. Plus, only Vishnu form has access to it, Shiva form does not. She also doesn't go for it nearly as much as Ravana did, and only has 1 press turn. This ultimately results in Vishnu form not really being able to do anything to stop us from bursting it down. Just keep yourself topped off with healing items if it ever goes for anything, and be sure to save beforehand. Even if she doesn't go for Hunger Wave often, it still has a good chance of applying to 2 or more targets, and that is a lose condition. After she takes around 1000 damage, she'll rotate into Shiva form, which is more squarely focused on offense. This form packs all 5 elemental all-target moves, along with Bhairava, which does so much almighty damage to 1 target, it's all but a guaranteed instant kill. Thankfully, it's only single target. Plus, she also has multiple physical moves, single and all target, so Fizz Resist and counter skills are still extremely useful. You want to get to this fight as quickly as possible to minimize the amount of time Vishnu casts buffs, as all buffs cast as Vishnu are maintained as Shiva. You may need to heal more often than you did with Vishnu, but this strategy is ultimately the same. Spam her down with Gunplay and Megiddo Fire for another 1000 HP, and she'll rotate back to Vishnu. After both Vishnu and Shiva go down one more time, she'll assume her ultimate form, and this is where the real fight begins. Hari-Hara upgrades from 1000 HP per form to over 11,000, and is now also surrounded by 6 cores. The cores have around 450 HP and repel the element for which they're named, the gold core representing both physical and gun attacks. And as long as a core lives, Hari-Hara inherits its affinity, meaning she starts the fight with repel everything. But we can still just use Almighty, right? Wrong! Hari-Hara and all of her cores have 90% resistance to Almighty, meaning each use does around 20 damage to every target. Finally, 7 units means 7 press turns. And while the cores only have mid-tier all-target and high-tier single-target for each of their elements, 7 actions is still a lot. And Hari-Hara is no slouch herself. Her basic attack is all-target, and she also packs Vanity, Blood Curse, the ability to take a combo action for huge almighty damage, and she maintains Hunger Wave, though it is now down to 40% odds. This still makes Hunger Wave a 35% chance to instantly lose, but it's getting better. Finally, she maintains a hidden bonus action, which allows her to recreate an element core at the start of her round, replacing one that has died. She takes this action for free at the start of each of her turns, which means we need to be downing multiple cores repeatedly in order to avoid a wipe. The more and more I looked at this, the more I determined it was not happening. There was simply too much damage coming my way for me to be able to keep damage on the board. The cores were doing too much. So, how do we deal with that? Well, Digital Devil Saga actually has a fair amount of side quests, many of which unlock special hidden mantra for you to teach your unit skills from. In this list is the High Priest mantra, which you get for completing the Beelzebub side quest, which gives you the Repel element passive. Unlike Makarakan, this is a passive, which means it is totally legal. Realizing what had to be done, I reloaded a save to go take on the game's endgame side quests. Well, that's actually a bit of a fib, I started them a long time ago. Before I even beat Ravana, I did some side questing to help me level up. Specifically, I used this time to fight Baal Zebul, who unlocks the Beelzebub fight, and King Frost, who unlocks after you beat Mick back in Coordinate 136. Neither of them were particularly special. Baal Zebul has around 6,000 HP and nulls everything but fire, fizz, and gun, the latter of which we had plenty of. Baal Zebul also doesn't have much he can even really do to us. Mind Scream is medium physical, which hardly phases a party of Fizz Resist, and also procs counter fairly often. Mazionga does do solid damage, and Megidolan and Mabudoon can be scary, but he doesn't go for either of them very often, so this fight is fairly trivial. King Frost is a bit more challenging, but unlocks the King mantra, which will be required for, a fight coming later. King Frost packs some beefy ice skills, ranging from Mabufula to Mabufudine. Power Wave does some decent damage too, and even if you were to null both, he still has Megiddo. Some ways to mitigate ice would be smart, as he's also packing Cositis, a random target ice move with an absurdly high chance to freeze. And to help him capitalize on this, he has Celestial Gift, a special move which summons a Jack Frost with increased HP with a lot of buff skills. They'll always attack with physical to capitalize off a freeze, but will besides trend towards buffing their king over dealing damage themselves. He'll spend a lot of time healing during this fight, especially once he starts casting Frost Rush, a high-power almighty physical move which does a lot. Take your time, bring a lot of wild cards if you can, and keep the jacks down while you slowly melt this king to a puddle. Back to the modern day, Beelzebub can be accessed through the part of Samsara Tunnels now accessible once you get the red key from the Brute's base. There's not much here that can't be found in the upper levels of the Karma Temple, though it's worth looting besides. The only important part comes at the end where you fight Beelzebub. And Beelzebub is a bastard. Beelzebub is far different from Baal Zebul. He goes from roughly 6,000 HP to over 15,000, and his moveset has seen a dramatic upgrade. He now packs Maziodine and Mazandine, though he favors the former, as he loves to take advantage of inflicting shock. Plus, his stats have seen enough of an increase that Mind Scream is now actually doing decent damage. After the fight goes on for a little while, he'll start using Charukaja and Makakaja, and also casting Megidolan. As we lack access to Dekaja, we lack a consistent way to peel these buffs, and Dekaja stones are rare. Make sure you have some though, as if he gets the +4 magic, you'll want to remove those buffs, as a +4 magic attack hits like a truck. Later still, he'll break out the big guns and start casting his ultimate move, Death Flies. Yep, it's back, and it's better than ever. This bad boy does around double the damage of Megidolan, while also sporting a 100% chance to kill anyone hit by the move. Thankfully, the instant kill specifically is Death type, meaning Death Resist reduces it to a coin flip, and Null Death reduces it to 0. I highly recommend springing for Null Death on whoever you can get it on. Furthermore, I like to, for once, completely forsake all counter damage. He prefers Mazandine and Maziodine to Megidolan, and once he starts buffing, will want to be taking as little damage as possible. So 4 of my 7 available slots went to resisting everything he could throw at me, and also nulling Death to stop Mamodoon and Death Flies. I also opted for Null Critical, which reduces the chance of him hitting with a critical hit. Wait, why isn't it called Resist Critical? I also elected to start using Gale again, as his magic stat is slightly higher than Cielo's, and now that most of our damage is coming from almighty items, he's more valuable. It also means less incoming magic damage, and while 12 points might not seem like much, Gale can take a +4 Death Flies, while Cielo will always die. I also bought the maximum number of medical kits, which heal the whole team for 150, along with the Graven Image, which acts as an infinite cast diorama. Medical kits can and should be used by anybody if the party takes a hit, but for Graven Image, you'll want to wait priority. At this point, Seraph has the highest magic, but he's also doing the most damage. Thus, you might not want to use him as a healer. You could have Argilla heal, but she's still doing more damage than Gale, but Gale might not heal for enough. Learn how much you heal for, and be prepared for the longest war of attrition in your life. Seriously, this is going to take a while. It's also worth the reminder that Mind Screen can stun, but not all stuns are created equal. Stun greatly reduces your accuracy and evasion, which is a panic state if it happens to Seraph, your main damage dealer, and a who cares if it happens to Gale, your main healer. If it stuns Argilla, make a judgment call. You might need healing more than you do Argilla doing damage, especially if he trends towards Death Flies, which does way too much damage. Play it safe, use whatever resources you need, pray he goes for Mahamon sometimes, and eventually, after 45 minutes, you'll knock this fly down. I'd like to point out that yes, I am grossly overleveled for this fight by typical standards, and everybody still got almost an entire level's worth of experience. Beating Beelzebub doesn't technically unlock you anything, but it does clear the road along the stretch of Samsara he was blocking. This somehow leads back to Muladhara of all places, allowing you to access 3 chests you couldn't before. These contain the Murder Rock, an infinitely reusable Mamudoon we will never use, and 2 other important tools, Magatama, the strongest ammo in the game, and the Tyrant Skull, which unlocks the High Priest mantra when taken to any Karma terminal. Though the skull was what we came here for, the usefulness of Magatama cannot be understated. It's a power 200 bullet, where the next best option is power 120. Now that we have every single member we care about completely immune to nearly the entire magical spectrum, we head through a separate part of Samsara to endure the worst water puzzle in the game in order to fight Orochi, for whom I completely forgot to equip Repel Element for some reason. He's immune to Gun, because of course he is, so we're going to be using Megiddo Fire to deal with his 5500 HP. What's really an issue here is his 8 bloody press turns. Thankfully, his magic stats aren't nearly what Beelzebub was packing, so over the course of his turn, he's doing roughly the same damage, if not less. The scariest thing he can do is spam Mad Rush. This does around 25 damage per hit and can hit 2 to 4 times. Thankfully, he won't hit any one target more than twice, but he still gets 8 turns, so unlucky rolls could mean 400 damage to one target along with more to others. Thankfully, he's not super accurate, so this fight is more an exercise of patience than skill. At the end of this area is a detached part of the Brute's Ajna base. The layer cell here is a nice money bonus, but the big thing we're here for is the red ring. It's important for a side quest, so make sure you grab it. Following this begins the game's main final side quest, and the last thing we have to take care of in the main game. After you beat Anahata, a guy outside the Karma Temple appears telling you of 4 new rookies who showed up and asserted themselves. Huang in Svadhisthana, Long in Ajna, Baihu in Manipura, and Guishan in Anahata. Baihu I did first, and I actually did him before I did Beelzebub. All 4 of them specialize in one specific element, and Baihu's is Force. Sadly, I lacked Force resistance, so that made this significantly harder, but thankfully Baihu's still the easiest out of the 4. While he is packing plenty of Force, he tends to go for physical attacks, which we resist. He is packing every single counter skill, which gives him an 88% chance to counterattack guns, but his own physical attacks give us a chance to counterattack ourselves. This fight is anything but smooth, but with enough healing, it's absolutely doable. The others are a bit on the tricky side. See, all of them take dramatically increased damage from their respective element, but also have Absorb for that element. If you use Repel Element, their AI will spam it into you to fully heal themselves off the damage alone. I suppose you could sit around and let them build their MP since that's technically possible, but if you actually want to fight them, well, let's use Guishan for example. Guishan focuses on Earth Magic, but has the special combat strategy of a bad Abbott and Costello routine going on between the turtle and the dragon.
We have who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
That's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of the fellas on the St. Louis team.
I'm telling you, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third.
You know the fellas' names?
Yes.
Then who's playing first?
Yeah.
I mean the fellow's name on first base.
Who?
If you can tolerate this, don't even bother with counter skills on this fight. Guishan has the highest physical resistance in the series that isn't outright null. I think it's in the ballpark of 98%. He'll be spamming Megiddo rocks to mill down his 6500 HP. Genbu doesn't really do anything particularly notable, but as he takes damage, he'll upgrade what skills he's using until he outpaces the capacity for you to heal and still deal damage. The same can be said for basically everybody else, which is why I chose to do it following Beelzebub. Huang is entirely immune to Gun, so item spam it is. She doesn't really have too much to speak of strategy-wise. She does nothing but cast fire spells, gradually switching to stronger fire spells as the fight progresses. Once she graduates to using Miragi Dine, things get dicey. So if you still have any firewalls, now would be a good time to use them. Graven Image is still decent, even on heat, as it'll heal for an acceptable amount no matter what. Keep in mind her buffs though. She will be casting Makakaja, which will make her swing for no small amount of damage. But even at the fight's latest, she was doing around 150 damage with Miragi Dine against heat, which meant she really wasn't getting too much damage to stick after we healed up. I then attempted Long, but he's the most unique fight of them all. Long prefers to set up with Makakaja and Mind Charge before swinging hard with Mabufu Dine. Unlike every other fight, he spends no time building up to Dying tier spells and just goes for the throat right away. Realizing at this point the fights were becoming insanely powerful, I figured now was the time to pull the plug on any semblance of not trying to be overwhelmingly overpowered for every fight, and leveled everybody in the party to 99. Though I did have every mantra at my disposal, I didn't have them all grinded up yet, so my second attempt at Long had me with Fizz Resist and Null Element. I would have brought Null Fizz off the Destroyer mantra, but I hadn't grinded that much yet. Being immune to nearly everything he can do but a Power Charged Revelation and HP Thief might make you think Long would become a complete joke. And you'd be right. We employ pretty much the same strategy for Guishan, who has literally no way to stop us. Beating all 4 of them unlocks 2 new fights, one back in Ajna, and one atop the highest floors of the Karma Temple. Let's take care of the hard one first. Welcome to the hardest boss of the main game, Huang Long Gaming. Huang Long is easily the hardest fight in the game. I took this fight at 99 with 99 wild bombs and with as much healing as I physically could because I needed it. The recording of this fight is called Koryu and nothing else and consists of 2 hours of a singular attempt. Huang Long has 22,500 HP, and also he resists gun in every phase and almighty in most phases, which means for our sake he has basically nearly twice that. Suffice to say, items are our go-to here. Guns are useful though, as counters will help tack damage on. I went into this with Life Gain and Life Surge for a 56% increase to HP, and Null Element and Null Ailment for reasons I'll explain later. You might ask yourself, well, why didn't you grind up Null Fizz this time? Well, that's the fun part, you see. Huang Long's basic attack is Physical Almighty, meaning it ignores any forms of mitigation. Even physical resistance doesn't work here. And he doesn't just have 1 phase, oh no, he has 7. Phase 1 is his physical phase, which gives him access to Megidolon, Mahamon, and Mamudun, while also having access to Tarunda. Tarunda isn't too much to worry about since we're spamming items, but Mamudun can drop you easy, and Megidolon isn't something that you exactly want to get hit by. Phase 2 is his fire phase, which gives him Makakaja and Makanda, along with Mind Charge and Miragidyne. Keep Mind Charge in mind for later. Phase 3 is Ice, as he drops Miragidyne for Mabufudyne and Makakaja for Sukunda. Remember, Sukunda is one of 2 debuffs that actually affect us, so remember what your accuracy stat is at. Phase 4 is Force, and is identical to Ice, just with Mazandyne and Makakaja instead of Makanda. Phase 5 is Earth, and he has Materadyne and Mind Charge alongside Makakaja. Phase 6 is his Almighty phase, in which his defenses drop, but he can do nothing but cast Megidolon, or his signature move, Celestial Ray. Celestial Ray is an all-target move which hits roughly 3 times as hard as Megidolon and has a random chance of applying Charm, Poison, Panic, Sleep, or Mute. That's why we brought Null Ailment. There's a good chance you'll see this back-to-back in the Almighty phase, and it usually hits hard enough that your response to it will be to spam heals and hope he leaves the phase. If he Mind Charged during his Fire or Earth phase and still has that active, you might have a wipe on your hands. And the most annoying part of this is that him being in this phase means he's going to take more damage from everything. So you also want to use this opportunity to do damage. Good luck figuring that one out. Lastly and finally is Phase 7. In Phase 7, he is immune to literally everything, even Almighty. He won't even attack you. That's it. He'll swap between physical, fire, ice, force, and earth phases seemingly at random, or if it's not random, I never found a pattern. You can tell when he shifts phases because he'll moan like he has to use the bathroom before he starts his turn. If he screams like he is actively using the bathroom, he's entered his Almighty phase. After that, he consistently goes into his do-nothing phase, which means he's giving you time to heal. After that, he returns to one of the 5 elemental phases and starts the process over. It should also be noted that he can cast Celestial Ray in his physical phase as well. He's just not guaranteed to spam it. Speaking of casting, you might have wondered why I didn't come in with Repel Element. Well, each of the elemental phases also has Absorb for its corresponding type, meaning Repel Element will just make him heal himself if he ever uses it, which makes me wonder why I even bothered unlocking the skill in the first place. If you've somehow not yet bought the Revival Gem from the shop, which is a reusable 100% revive, now would be a real good time. If he's casting debuffs on you, since we have no way to peel them easily, it's not a terrible idea to let a unit who's particularly low on HP go down. If they go down, when they stand back up, they'll have cleansed their buffs, and since Revival Gem is an infinite use full heal, this essentially lets you cleanse any unit at the cost of an action. I also recommend using muscle drinks. Though they can afflict you with ailments despite your immunity to them, poison or ache is usually worth the 750 HP you'll get from it. I really have nothing else to say about this fight. This fight just takes forever, and there's nothing you can do to speed it up. I feel like I want to say more to fully express how unbelievably long this takes and how much of a pain it is. But normally I'd spend this time talking about, like, strategies, but I have nothing to say. The strategy for this fight really is just slap Megiddo fire in his face roughly 300 times until you win. Oh, thank God the fight's over. Thankfully, the next fight isn't nearly that agonizing. Unlocked alongside Huang is Alan Rickman, who at first might seem a little bit scary. He has Miragidyne, Revelation for physical damage, Megidolon, Mind Charge, and once you do enough damage, he'll break out Fire of Sinai, which does exactly what it used to. 5 to 8 random hits of massive almighty damage, which can hit any one target up to 3 times. 3 hits does upward of 1200 damage, which is a guaranteed instant kill. Now, given it's possible for him not to hit any one target more than 3 times, it's possible that you'll live this attack. But the longer the fight goes on, the more he'll buff his magic, and the more he'll lower your defense. Until one day, he finally stacks enough buffs and debuffs and goes for the Mind Charge. After a couple of tries, I realized how similar this fight is to his fight in Nocturne. Metatron possesses distinct phases, each denoted via dialogue triggers. In his first phase, he sticks to exclusively basic attacks, Miragidyne and Mahamon. This means any unit who is immune to physical, fire, and light would be completely unable to take any damage from anything he does until Metatron somehow took enough damage to start using almighty attacks. And as we discovered during Ravana, this game does in fact keep track of MP for enemies. He finally proves his worth to the team by walking before Metatron and doing absolutely nothing for an hour and a half. Before tagging in Surf, Argilla, and Gale, who, while also packing Null Fizz and Null Element, proceeded to just clean up with no effort whatsoever.
Can't hurt me!
Metatron.
With Metatron defeated, we now have access to every mantra. There is nothing left in the main game we haven't done, no box left unchecked, and Repel Element finally gets to be relevant. Now that we've taken care of everything, we head back to Hari-Hara ready to give her what for. The opening phase is basically the same as before, only now Megiddo Fire is doing even more damage now that it has the weight of 30 more levels behind it. The only way she can do anything to stop us is double proccing Hunger Wave, which... Yeah, she can totally do that. But beyond that, phase 1 is totally trivial. Phase 2 is where Repel Element finally starts to shine. I initially began spamming Wild Bombs to blow up everything at once in spite of how garbage the damage still is, until the Gold Core was defeated and I was able to swing into her with Argilla and Seraph's guns. The issue with that strategy is that I physically cannot deal enough damage even if everyone continues to use Wild Bombs to keep the cores from respawning. Eventually the Gold Core will come back, and that puts all damage on hold. But that's when I realized I repel all elements now. And as long as I do, the fact that the cores repel their corresponding element doesn't matter anymore. I'm not taking the damage anymore.
I've got an idea!
I immediately reloaded the fight to the beginning, teleported to Ajna, brought 99 of every single elemental stone just to be sure, then teleported back to Sahasrara and took the fight again. I'm not entirely sure why I used Wild Bombs to clear the cores the first time, but after I did, I tried using a Magni Bomb. At this point, my strategy shifted entirely, and to be honest, with Repel Element in this strategy, I probably could have taken the fight 30 levels ago. 3 items completely kills every core, and also does significant damage to Hari-Hara herself, far more than I was ever doing with my guns. At the rate we're doing damage, it's impossible for Hari-Hara to ever have enough cores up that we don't have some kind of option. As long as she doesn't have every core but physical and gun up, we are able to clear the field of cores without any trouble. Shoot, it's debatable if Hunger Wave is even still a lose state, since unless she uses a combo for reincarnation, which she can only do if she has 2 cores alive, she lacks any way to damage us. That's not a joke. If you have no fizz and no element, she lacks an almighty option if she never has 2 cores alive. This turns the fight from a slow and painful slog into a much needed victory lap. And that's it. Cutscenes don't count, so Vanya swinging on Angel is totally allowed as the junkyard begins to collapse. As the world falls apart, the gang runs for the escape, with Gale even taking the time to save Angel, but Surf just can't make it. With the tower giving way as the Embryon are carried off to Nirvana or elsewhere. We have proven that you can beat Digital Devil Saga without using any... Welcome to the reason you're all here. The DDS bonus fight against Demi-Fiend is largely considered to be one of, if not the hardest bosses in any Atlas game ever. Even compared to the DLC bonus fight against also the Demi-Fiend in Shin Megami Tensei 5. There are rumors that say nobody at Atlas actually ever beat this. They just made it and went, that's good enough. And this fight is an absolute nightmare of rules and regulations to even play the fight out. Because absolutely nothing in this fight is like anything we've done so far. Before I even begin to talk about anything resembling a strategy, I need to make sure y'all understand what we're dealing with here. The Demi-Fiend himself isn't too scary, despite being the main damage dealer. He may be packing 2 press turns, but he actually only has 6 moves. His basic attack, which is now entirely almighty for low single target damage, Javelin Rain, which does heavy physical damage to all targets with a 40% mute chance, Zaros Beat, which does the same but with a 50% stun chance, Heat Wave, which hits for slightly less damage but has an increased crit chance, and 2 special options. Up first is Gaia Rage, which does... way too much damage. If this hits, you die. I'm pretty sure the damage numbers are a formality. He uses this under 2 conditions. Firstly, if you are at any point immune or better to anything, be it from an item, a skill, or a passive, his AI will spam this until the fight is over. So remove those passes before you even start. The second condition we'll get to, but we'll keep that in mind. The second option he has is Metatron. Yes, the one that fully heals the party. He'll use this when he has taken 50% of his 18,000 HP in damage. This means he has an effective 27,000 HP. And all of his demons also have Metatron. Once Demi-Fiend hits 9,000 HP, someone is casting Metatron. This would still be manageable if not for one thing. He's not alone. This may be the Demi-Fiend from Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, but he's not bound by the no demon rules anymore. And he's packing an all-star team of 6 demons for you to tango with. The second any of these demons go down, he will instantly summon another, going in the same order each time until he returns at the top of the list. The first 2 demons Demi-Fiend starts with are a combo, Cuculain and Givermakala. Cuculain has 3,000 HP, but his pattern is simple. At the start of his turn, he will look to see if anyone on your side has -4 defense. If you don't, he casts Taunt, which gives you a +2 to physical attack and a -2 to defense. If anyone has a -4, he will use a physical attack. Givermakala has 3,500 HP and is packing his typical resistances, so don't expect guns to help too much. He'll start his turn by looking to see if anyone has any buffs. If you do, he'll cast a Kasha to remove them. Otherwise, he'll cast Mamudoon. He has other moves, but I've literally never seen him use them. This combo is easy to recognize. Cuchulainn gives a +2/-2 with Taunt, then Giramakala removes the +2. This means Demi-Fiend will be doing a lot to you very quickly. Once either of them go down, Demi-Fiend will replace them with Pixie. Pixie only has 1700 HP, but also takes less damage from magic than most other units. She'll initially be casting Maziodyne and Vanity, the latter of which can be an issue as we don't have a great way to deal with status effects, but after the Mediavahin happens, she'll start casting Megidolon. She can also heal single target with Diorama for around 350. After someone else goes down, he'll send out Arahabaki, who has 3000 HP and is, again, immune to guns. Depending on how nice the AI feels, Arahabaki can either be laughably easy or an insurmountable hurdle. Gate of Hell is the least of our worries. What we need to worry about is Debilitate and Ragnarok. Ragnarok is a Megidolon tier almighty move that also debuffs defense by 1 on use. How much Arahabaki ruins your plans depends on how much he uses that move. After that comes Titania with 2000 HP. Titania has Rakunda and Secunda, but mostly she's here to just cast Mavagydyne, Mabufudyne, and Maziodyne. Nothing too crazy here. Lastly is Parvati, who has 1900 HP on paper, but not in practice. While she has nothing she can do to hurt us, she has a multitude of buff spells to help her entire team, along with Mediarama to heal her entire group. The longer Parvati is alive, the longer the fight is going to take. Also, there are 2 more moves I've neglected to mention up until now that complicate matters even further. Let's start with Dormina. Pixie and Parvati will always open by casting Dormina. Fairly innocuous little thing, right? Trying to inflict sleep, nothing big. Remember the second condition I mentioned for Demi-Fiend casting Gaia Rage? After Pixie or Parvati cast Dormina, Demi-Fiend will consistently, with his next available action, cast Gaia Rage. Once Pixie or Parvati drop, Demi-Fiend is going to try to kill you. And the second and final caveat I've not yet mentioned is a move all the demons share. Vikarmdra. After each demon takes 30 actions that are not Dekunda or Dekaja, they will cast Vikarmdra with their 31st action, reducing themselves to 0 HP to fully heal both their other ally as well as the Demi-Fiend. With all of that, you might be thinking to yourself, what the hell are you even supposed to do? You can't null them, you can't stop them, he's guaranteed to try to just end the fight at least twice. How are you even supposed to tack on meaningful damage? By using every single strategy we've learned up until now. First things first, we need to dodge the Gaia Rage. This is why we beat King Frost earlier. See, the King mantra unlocks Null Sleep, which does not prevent sleep, but instead allows the user to dodge all attacks made against them while they are asleep. Terrible naming aside, this thankfully means that Null Sleep does not activate Demi-Fiend's Enrage. This is how we're going to dodge Gaia Rage. Whenever Pixie or Parvati come out, we get slept to dodge the instant kill. This also affects how we build our stats. Just like Nocturne, luck affects both the odds of getting hit by a status effect as well as the odds to clear it naturally. Since we want to get inflicted, I actually elected not to grind stat boosting items for luck. After that, I grinded up stat boosting items for every single stat to get everyone to the maximum for HP, strength, magic, vitality, and agility. And after you've done that for half of your natural life, you're officially ready to begin your attempts once you get someone on your squad afflicted with Mute. See, Digital Devil Saga has a priority system for its status effects. Certain status effects trump others, and certain ailments cannot be inflicted upon a target with an ailment of a higher priority. It seems like Mute and Stun have the same priority, and Demi-Fiend's AI will look at the field when deciding what move to use. If he sees someone on the field cannot be inflicted with Stun, like if they were already muted, he'll go, well, if I can't stun him, why would I try? And will not use that off speed. And the reverse is also true. If any unit is stunned, he'll know he can't mute them, and thus will never use Javelin Rain. Now, stun dramatically reduces our accuracy and evasion, and also prevents us from using counter skills, whereas mute does basically nothing for a team with no magic capability outside of enchanted rocks. It should be noted, however, mute beats sleep, meaning if we are afflicted with mute, and we're going to be inflicted with mute, we are immune to sleep. This means that we need to make sure that we are muted going into the fight so Demi-Fiend doesn't stun us, but that we are not muted when Pixie comes out so that we can be slept. And then we have to pray that Pixie actually manages to sleep somebody, because Dormina only has a 30% chance to succeed. With all of that done, all that's left is to pick our skills. We obviously need no sleep, and we can't get rid of human form, but I also opted for Death Resist, since Demi-Fiend doesn't care about resist skills, and it makes it so Gear Makala doesn't drop somebody every time he uses Mamudoon. I also kept Fizz Resist, because without it, Demi-Fiend does roughly 500 damage a turn before debuffs. I also took Null Critical again to reduce the odds of Demi-Fiend critting from guaranteed to very likely. This leaves 3 skills, of which I opted for Counter, Counter, and more Counter. All 3 counter skills combined give us an 88% chance to counterattack, which we'll need as, shockingly, that's where most of our damage is coming from. See, the fight ends when Demi-Fiend goes down. He is an SMT protagonist after all. So all that really matters is the damage we're putting on Demi-Fiend. And if we have an 88% chance to counter, that means every single time Demi-Fiend uses one of his all-target physical attacks, we have a very high chance to score some damage on him. We'll still be using items to damage the others, which will inadvertently damage Demi-Fiend, but most of our damage is going to be coming from counterattacks. From there, we open up 5 separate calculators, 1 for Demi-Fiend's HP, 1 for each demon's HP, and 2 more for each demon's turn count, and officially start attempting the fight. Allow me to show you what that looks like. Demi-Fiend consistently takes the first turn, and Cuchulainn and Gear Makala don't start their respective combos until the next turn, instead using a random physical attack and Mamudoon respectively. If Gear Makala gets a kill on the first turn, reset. From there, Cuchulainn will begin to taunt, which will prompt Gear Makala to Dekaja it away. Remember, Dekaja does not count towards the 30-turn counter. Use Wild Bomb to get Cuchulainn to around 1000 to 1200 damage. From here, you'll want to do party rotations like I mentioned earlier. Mind your health though, depending on everyone's HP, it might be possible for Demi-Fiend to still kill you. If so, I recommend doing a partial rotation. Use your first turn to heal, and then tag Surf out for a standby, in this case Heat. Then tag and Surf over whoever you want to live, usually Argilla, but if Argilla still has a decent amount of HP left, you can tag out Gale and hope she still lives. At this point, you should have 2 of the same units as before, and 1 new guy. One of your units will still have a -4 to defense, so that means you'll either have to heal them or tag them out later. If they die, that also works too. Death cleanses debuffs after all. Also worth noting, Cuchulainn will not use Taunt, which means Gear Makala will not use Dekaja. All of your counter skills will likely result in Cuchulainn taking some damage as well, so keep track of his HP and keep Cuchulainn using Taunt as much as possible so that Gear Makala's turn count is as low as possible. Once Cuchulainn has taken around 20 actions, Demi-Fiend's HP should be low enough to start making your next move. You'll want to try to kill Cuchulainn on the same turn Demi-Fiend is about to heal himself. Keep in mind, Cuchulainn takes around 200 damage from a Wild Bomb compared to Demi-Fiend's 155-ish, and Demi-Fiend will likely be racking up damage on himself off of your counters at the same time, so you'll want to start this early. At the same time, start working on removing Mute. If you have any backup party members who aren't muted, tagging them in is also an option. With some luck, Cuchulainn will go down on the same turn as Demi-Fiend hits 9000, and he'll get himself healed at the same time Pixie comes out. If Gear Makala's turn counter is around 7 or 8, you're on a good pace. Assuming you have somebody unmuted and that they get slept, and that they also manage to wake up on your turn rather than Demi-Fiend's turn, you should be able to revive your party, now thankfully cleansed of debuffs. If your survivor doesn't die along the way, you can tag them out and back in to clean them off. Since the Medirahin was used, Pixie will come out casting Megidolon rather than prioritizing Maziodyne and Vanity. Believe it or not, this is a good thing, since Vanity has a chance to inflict Charm or Panic, both of which can end a run by themselves. Megidolon does roughly as much damage as Demi-Fiend's attacks if you took physical resistance, and since we're now cleansed of debuffs, it's not too much to worry about. This part of the fight is, thankfully, pretty easy. Focus on bursting Gear Makala down using Wild Bombs, and try and land the killing blow as close to him casting Rakandra as possible. Keep in mind, Pixie can heal him using Diorama, so you might not want to try to sweet spot it too much. Up next is Arahavaki, who doesn't complicate matters too much. Ragnarok can be troublesome, but he uses it less often than he should, and it doesn't debuff you as much as Taunt did. Depending on how nice the AI feels, this can be the end of a run or a chance to coast. Either way, keep doing what you're doing until Pixie goes down. Titania will replace her, and she's actually a bit of an issue. Her attacks aren't a concern, it's the debuffs we need to worry about. Rakunda stacks with Arahavaki's Ragnarok, and Secunda will let them juke your Wild Bombs, which can throw off your rhythm. Keep yourself healed up, and don't be afraid to do a rotation if you need to cleanse debuffs. By this point, Demi-Fiend might actually be in his red health animation. Titania will almost definitely go down before Arahabaki, but the good news is, unlike Kukulane, she's in no danger of dropping herself off of your counterattacks. You can bring her down to 0 whenever you feel like summoning Parvati. It's actually possible with a bit of luck to drop Demi-Fiend before Parvati even comes out, which means you don't need to do the second Dormina roll at all. Regardless, the second roll is the same as the first. Hopefully you don't even need to worry about killing Arahabaki this time, as Demi-Fiend should be a few bombs and counters from going down. Steady your heart, take a deep breath, and you can officially say that you didn't just beat, but completed Digital Devil Saga without using any demons.
It's the only way.
Way back when, I became fed up with this project because of Rahu and put it down. But once I picked it back up in September of 2022, I realized just how much fun this run was, and how much I really wanted to give the Nocturne video the follow-up it deserved. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us. To see our channel grow like this has been something I can't put into words. Let me know what you thought of this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Special thanks to Patreon backers Axel Rosenberg, Moonrabbit, Sokekian, and Cuddlefish, and to YouTube members Fabrizio Pignataro, Ryuko Strifer, and Daniel Trejo. I'd also like to give special thanks to Zephyr 1999 Ford Taurus and Maxstar for voicing Surf, Heat, and Argilla in that one scene, and to Thanos Pakidis on Twitter for making that Demi-Fiend render. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one.